Hello everybody and welcome back once again to our second playthrough of Suzerain, where we are playing as the cigar-smoking Leonardo DiCaprio look-alike of a president, Anton Rain. In this particular playthrough, I'm trying to play him as a kind of a power-hungry, greedy, dictatory type that's got a love for the country. Will kind of do decisions based on that kind of nationalist mentality, but where it might be beneficial for him personally, or for grabbing onto power, he might make some alternative decisions. In terms of how he deals with his family, you'll notice that we're not quite so harsh. We're a little bit like, try to pander to our wife a little bit, be a good father and all that. So, not going to be completely horrible to our wife and kids, but there'll be some decisions that we are obviously aware of, if you've played the game before, that we'll have to make in relation to, particularly our wife, that might not go down too well, so we'll see how that pans out. Anyway, here we are, starting today's session, hour-long session. I've just finished work. It's like 26 degrees outside, and it's June when I'm recording this. I have no idea when you'll be seeing this, but probably July-ish time, I imagine. Maybe into August. It's probably going to be July, to be fair. I just finished work. I'm really in a good mood. And I thought, I'm just going to kick off and start my evening, afternoon, after work with an hour of this to kick things off before I probably end up watching some football and streaming some Baldur's Gate 3 later. But anyway, we've got a funeral to attend, so of course we're going to attend because we want to be president for as long as possible. So we have to do presidential type things. We have to kind of, put that presidential mask on, certainly to members of the public, be the face of, reason. And, I'm doing everything I can for the good of the country. And, hence why we visited towns, affected cities following the unrest. We'll do all we can to make ourselves look good. Even if we don't really want to, we will end up, we will do things to try to boost our image. And attending the funeral of Bernard Circus certainly is a must, toe the party line and all that. Hopefully we won't slip up with any speeches, perhaps. Some of our bias dribbling out, maybe, who knows. Anyway, we are at St. Dast's nearest cemetery, and we're at the funeral of Bernard Circus, recently shot dead at our ball. I think we're more concerned about the fact that the attention was taken away from us at our own very inaugural ball. Couldn't you get shot another time? Dark clouds were looming over Dare. They looked daunting as our convoy started approaching the century-old cemetery. It looked like it was going to rain. Certainly fitting weather for a funeral. As expected, Bernard Circus's passing maintained its media traction, and all of Swordland was paying attention to the ceremony, especially to what I would say in my speech today. Sir, we have arrived. Raindrops were falling. Raindrops were running down the car window when Sergei opened my door and held an umbrella over my head. As soon as I got out, flashes from the cameras blinded me. We could hold our own umbrella, but clearly, no. We shall not. Thank you, we say to Sergei. It's my duty, sir. He silently started following me while holding the umbrella. Peter and Carl exited from their own cars in the convoy. They made their way over to me. Anton! Mr. President, I just wanted to inform you that the perimeter is clear and secured completely. There is no one getting in or out without our knowledge. Yes. We don't want something similar happening again, do we? Don't forget Carl got a royal tongue lashing in the aftermath of the shooting when we lost our temper. Absolutely not, Mr. President. The same mistakes will never happen again. I personally made sure of that. Good. If anything happens to Anton, you'll have to answer to the First Lady. And trust me, Carl, you don't want that. Peter let out a laugh, which drew some attention from bereaved attendees. We just give Peter a subtle gesture to lower his voice. Oh, you're right, I'm sorry. It started to rain. Several unintelligible voices were heard from Carl's radio. He stepped out to reply and returned shortly. We have a small problem, sir. Can you imagine the look on our face? Problem? A few, 5 to be exact, Red Youth members are here to attend the funeral. They apparently said they wish to pay their respects to their fallen comrade. Should we let them in? No. I don't think we should, actually. We don't want any dramas here today, Carl. Absolutely not. Too risky. As you command. Let's head over. They're about to start. We walked towards the crowd circled around the grave. Everyone in attendance was wearing black in mourning. The rain started pouring heavily. Bernard's widow and daughter were in the front row, staring at the coffin with a mixture of disbelief, confusion, and above all, a cold, unforgiving sadness. Both of their eyes were very red and swollen from weeping. Before taking my place to observe the ceremony, I gave my condolences to Bernard's wife and his daughter, who looked at me. She reminded me of Dina. When the religious ceremony was done, I was invited by the priest to deliver my speech. I took the podium. I felt like I had a lump in my throat. I couldn't get the daughter's eyes out of my head. Today, we are mourning Bernard Circus, a father, a husband, and a loyal servant of this country. There was complete silence, except for the sound of raindrops. This is a great loss for all of us, for our country. And we'll make sure that unfortunate events such as this will never happen ever again. Let us all mourn the passing of Bernard Circus and remember him well. Thank you. Some attendees started clapping, some crying. The coffin was lowered into the grave by the gravekeepers, and after a couple of minutes, Bernard Circus was with the soil. No more. As we bid farewell to Bernard, I want to close with the words every sword lives by. Amogna Westcor. Everyone replied, Vecturn sis da. Victory is close. With applauses, I stepped down from the podium. It was time to leave. The widow thanked me with a soft and defeated voice before we dispersed. On my way back to the car, I still couldn't get the eyes of Bernard's daughter, nor the faltering voice of his wife out of my head. Would Dina, Monica, and Frank look the same way if something happened to me? Peter put his hand on my shoulder. Oh, that was a good speech. I sensed only respect from his voice. Thank you. I mean it. I know you do. Come on, it's time to go. We've got work to do. He was right. We did have work to do. so much more to do. I realised that the rain had stopped, and I looked up. The black clouds slowly dispersed, and sunbeams enlightened our surroundings. As someone once said, even the darkest night will end, and the sun will rise. Hope was still on the horizon. Bing, bing. Right, okay, so we kept our speech quite neutral. We didn't want to politically charge it. We've obviously been told by... I forgot his name. What's he called? Be right out. Lucian. Jesus. How could I forget him? Lucian. Lucian told us not to make it politically charged, so we, let's not get the situation out of control. So we kind of kept it neutral, as we could have talked about his ideologies and how we disagreed with them, or, his attack against him, his attack against me personally, and all this kind of drama. But no, we try to keep it quite neutral for the sake of, trying to save anything from being taken out of hand. Right, we've got some news. Let's take a quick look. I don't think... so, President Rain's last farewell to Bernard's Circus. So, us attending was a show of compassion, which has gone down well. They're quite... of course, this is the paper that is run by the man we've had to deal with, so it's going to be good, isn't it? It's going to be a nice write-up. Even The Economist decides to write about it. So, yeah. Somber atmosphere in the city. Millennialist anthems played from loudspeakers. People were watching the procession. Very somber mood and radical. Reporting on the controversy. The controversy being, of course, the fact that we denied the Red Youth attendance. We call this act shameful and expect an apology from the President as soon as possible, or else he will prove to be just like his predecessors. Look, I'm just looking out for national security. My security. That's all it is. There's nothing malicious about it. There's no ulterior motives about it. We say with fingers crossed behind our back. Right then. Diplomatic briefing. Several days later, after the dramas of the funeral, we are at the Blue Mansion in our hometown. Good old Lashaven. The door opened, and David Wishy, once a lecturer to me, now the Minister of Foreign Affairs, gently made his way toward my desk. "May I sit down, Mr. President?" "Of course. It's a pleasure to see you, Mr. Wishy. Please take a seat." Likewise. We have so much ahead of us to accomplish." He slowly sat down, taking care not to aggravate the arthritis in his knees. He does have an air of gravitas about him, and old age had only served to deepen that. After he settled himself, he regarded me with delight, his blue eyes sparkling. "Look at you, Anton, the 4th President of Swordland. What a privilege for me. I still remember the first day you took my class at the Shaven School of Economics. Somehow, the inexplicable ebb and flow of life has led us here, to positions where we can change the course of history. This is our opportunity, David, to shape the future, and we will do precisely that. I am looking forward to our new foreign policy. I am looking forward to present you the latest bill I am working on. The TCPA has turned out to be an initiative that can significantly boost our tourism and culture industry. This untapped value would help us internationally to promote our position. I am convinced it can also help improve our economic condition after discussions with Minister Hall and Manger. The GNA and USP factions are supportive too. I really shouldn't have done overtime hours to get it done, but I really care for position and value of our culture. He started coughing again, this time for longer. Would you like some tea or water, David? Oh, yes, please. Tea and water sounds nice. Thank you very much. He smiled. Livia brought 2 cups of tea, along with a glass of water, and placed them on the table. It seems you still remember how much I like tea. Nowadays it really does wonders for my throat. How is your health, David? Oh, I haven't had any big complications except the usual. After that heart attack earlier this year. The health complications aren't a hindrance to my work, of course, but thanks for asking. How is the Rain family? We're slowly getting used to the routine. As time passes, I realize it more. Family is the most important thing in life. We must take care of them. The door opened. Yosef and Lucian joined us for the briefing as the tall case clock hit the hour mark. Peter, however, was missing. I wondered if he was late from all the drinking he did at the party in Leshaven. We'll talk more later, President Rain. Welcome, everyone. Right, without further ado, let's begin. Very well. I will start by providing a brief overview of our current status with our neighbours. What would you like to start with? Agnolia. Our brotherly nation to our northeast, Agnolia, yes, they are still diplomatically non-aligned and probably has one of the most democratic systems between our neighbours. Yes, economic stagnation is a worry for them. Their primary issue is their heavy reliance on foreign investment from us. Agnolia is our most friendly neighbour. We have been allies for the longest time after Rumburg annexed Dome. This fact needs to be part of the equation. Unsurprisingly, the Agnolian Prime Minister Martin van Horten is expecting better cooperation through a new, fairer trade deal with us. It was one of his election mandates. We should maintain our existing agreement. We can't lose our advantage. That would be the most pragmatic choice. Our export tariffs to Agnolia are incredibly low under the current agreement. Additionally, the latest numbers indicate that currently 1 million Agno-Swordish citizens live in the Agland region of Swordland, which creates a link between foreign policy and our internal affairs. These people have suffered socio-economically, which led them to crime and other problems. In addition, a relaxed immigration policy was one of Agnolia's main requests, which is unacceptable. Most of the migrants in our country haven't even assimilated into Swordish culture. Adding more won't help. I'm skeptical about relaxed immigration. You should be. We have already witnessed several society-shifting waves of migration. We should remember that we promised to tighten our immigration laws in the election campaign. Fine. And, Valen, David? It is a tumultuous in the south, as always. Victor Smolak is expanding his powers among protests from Wezek people. However, he is quite positive about a normalization of relationship between our countries. Despite purging the Wezek communists, reports indicate that they have been warming up to Kontanen international aid. As you know, Wayland's stability was always a concern for the region. But if we want to help them, we must not treat refugees like we did in the 30s. I still can't stomach the inhumanity those people suffered. I'm sure a trade agreement between us would improve stability and increase mutual trade. There would be many bargaining chips discussed, but Valen could be a new partner in the region. We would also invest in stability there. Our main goal should be to avoid a refugee crisis like the late 1920s. That civil war had major security and economic repercussions on Swordish soil. One of the demands of President Smolak was to tighten our immigration laws so the political refugees don't escape to Swordsland. There has been a recent purge that pushed many Bludish to free to Bergia. It is definitely troubling. Gumlan Outpost has regained its importance due to this. I'm sure you will remember that winter at the border outpost, Mr. President. He was right. I did remember that winter. I remembered the despair in the refugees' eyes when we forcefully escorted them back to the Wayland border. It is in our national interest to prevent the formation of a failed state on our western border. Wayland has been increasingly aligning itself toward the Communist Alliance. Another point to analyse. Okay, and Valgsland, please. Our cousins of old across the Markian Sea wish to have good relations with us. As we all know, Valgsland is a socialist republic aligned with United Kuntana. They are an important regional player. It is also the most significant sea power in almost all of Makopa. It is the only country that can rival the superpowers with their navy. We had hostile relations with them after several wars of the 19th century, which we wouldn't want to experience again. Recently, the relationship has warmed up thanks to Emmerich Hegel. As a result, diplomatic talks can be conducted in the future. Breaking the ice could be good if we are to rise diplomatically. I agree. They could be potential allies in my opinion. The situation in the region necessitates that we find allies. They haven't been in good standing with us for the past 200 years. Recently, they have also joined the Communist Kuntanan Security Pact, subjugating themselves to United Kuntana. On top of that, territorial issues have been flaring up between Agnolia and Valgsland because of the Heliland Island. The Swordish Navy is very concerned with this volatile situation. Lucian looked slightly worried. Unfortunately, billions of Swordish Ren worth of cargo is transported close to the Valgslandian maritime borders on the Markian Sea and the Grey Strait. This causes significant risks to our imports and exports in the case of a deterioration in relations. It is indeed of high strategic value. Yosef, the Navy is keeping an eye on the situation from a distance, right? We are actively monitoring the sea routes and cargo ships. For now, there is no immediate threat, but we don't know what can happen in the future. Okay, let's move on. Two important neighbouring countries remain, Lesbia and Rumburg. Which would you like to hear about first? Lesbia, please. Our southern neighbour is aligning itself more and more with Arcasia. Lesbia is currently led by Prime Minister Patricio Alvarez. They are the jewel of the continent and the second largest economy in Makopa. Though wealthy, Lesbia suffers from excessive economic inequality. Our past relations have been great, but during the last decade their investments to Swordland dwindled due to our instability. Allying with the richest nation could be beneficial. It could be, but it would also mean that we would draw closer to the Arcasia bloc and near the Arcasian Treaty Organization. I am certain that the recession has a lot to do with their retraction of investments. Once they see that money isn't in the picture, they vanish rather quickly because they are capitalists. They have shown a selfish attitude during the Wayland Civil War by closing their borders and funneling refugees to cross into Swordland. Maybe it might be difficult to see eye to eye, but let's not rule it out completely just yet. I completely agree. Lesbia has for a long time benefited from us through our old tariffs. They are after exploitation. There are hundreds of very privileged oligarchs who invest inside and outside of Lesbia. Some made significant business investments in the cities of Benfi and Valgam. Finally, Tell me about this situation that is bubbling away with Rumberg. Now to the most troublesome nation, Rumberg, a constitutional monarchy led by Queen Beatrice Livingston. I highly advise caution and calculated action against Rumberg. Our military must be prepared. The threat is very real. They are strong and have the motivation as well as the means to damage us. We shouldn't give them any reasons to pursue aggression. We must prevent them from interfering in our affairs. They have shown similar behavior to their neighboring countries before, but we must be cautious. While Thornborough openly denies such claims, their past and current actions make it clear that they want to destabilize us. The weapon caches found by our intelligence agency clearly shows what their goals are. Our military must be steadfast and our diplomacy valiant. Iosif looks stern and full of resolve. The Rumberg threat is one of our top priorities. You can be quite assured of that. We are always in dialogue with our Rumberg ambassador to make sure a channel is open to solve disputes. We could use their aggressive attitude against them by convincing the international community. Lucian grabbed the Leshaven Times newspaper and put his finger on the article about the latest diplomatic incident. Their abrupt announcement about the closure of Rumberg consulate in Leshaven is yet another step in their escalation. This covers the overview of the current situation. We will move on to our trade choice and the response to Rumberg's diplomatic escalation. The sun began to set over the hills surrounding Leshaven. The team was ready to give advice on the new trade initiative and their response to the latest diplomatic incident with Rumberg. Peter arrived late. He looked a little rougher than usual. It must have been the drinking from last night. Hey there, folks. Excuse my delay. I'm sure I didn't miss anything we didn't already know. You were supposed to be part of this meeting an hour ago. Punctuality is important. We are talking about serious subjects here. Peter was assigned a task from me, and is why he's late. So let's move on, shall we? Yes. It went successfully, sir. Peter's tone was more serious. Expect a report on your desk tomorrow. The Vice President will be part of the trade delegation, so it will be great to have his input on that subject as well as the Rumberg incident. Rumberg Consul Sir Bran Harrington announced the closure of the 120-year-old consulate. Now their diplomatic staff is leaving the city to go back to Thornborough. He blamed the lack of security in Swordland due to the assassination and the subsequent protests, but it is obvious that they are making excuses. Bastards! First they closed the consulate, and now they blame our security? Yes, the security situation clearly is under control. They are playing with us. Isn't it telling that other countries are working with us while Rumberg is just cutting more ties? The neglect of President Alfonso and the chaos of the elections delayed our diplomatic efforts. Now there are only 2 diplomatic Rumberg missions left in Swordland. One is the consulate in Dare, and the other is the embassy in Holsword. I must display strength to my people. We can't be pushed around. All of this may be a calculated plan of action to push us into a corner and get us to act irrationally. This is my fear. They might be looking for a casus belli and are slowly spiralling downward to find reasons to wage war. Iosif Lancia was furious. He barely kept himself from slamming the desk. There are worrying developments, like the smuggled arms and the build-up near the border. Our military must be buffed up to stand against a great power like Rumberg. We either respond to this aggressive act with a diplomatic condemnation, or we retaliate by closing our consulate in Dome. I want to say that an escalation would be risky this early in our presidency. We should focus on creating a negative image of Rumberg in the international scene. The people of Swordland must be protected, no matter the cost. I say we respond equally. I agree, Iosif. I completely agree. Retaliate by closing the Swordland Consulate in Dome. They think they can bully us. They were never so wrong. As you wish, Mr. President. I shall begin work by immediately informing the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. A strong response to Rumburg will boost popularity at home. I'm glad that we are drawing a clear red line. Otherwise, they will keep escalating the situation. I like your determination, Mr. President. There are 3 trade-related topics to address today. Which topic should we tackle first? Yes. Let's hear about the Kingdom of Rhesia. We haven't heard about them yet. Former President Alfonso signed trade agreements with King Romus Taurus of Rhesia. The previous government revived the older relationship that existed during the days of the Swordish monarchy. In 1918, King Egmund signed a trade deal with Queen Liza the Great to save the kingdom from economic collapse with the support of his key advisors. Some Rhesians who settled for the deal in the final years of the kingdom still live in the old town of Holsor to this day. The main negotiator was my father, former President Arthur S. Wishy, who, with the Republican faction of the King's Parliament, fought to achieve a rare consensus in the heavily fractured council at the time. Mot he vest Pisa. David hesitated for a brief moment. Your father was a great man. May he rest in peace. Thank you, Anton. I hope our nation never faces the tragedies of those dark days again. He was the best father one could have wanted. He deserved a more honourable end. The room went silent for a moment. Let's continue our discussions about Rhesia. Looking back a few years, they played a significant role in helping Swordland avoid depression. There is merit to this fact. Yes, the Rhesian gold invested in Swordland in exchange for different degrees of ownership of state assets strengthened the currency by boosting the central bank reserves and averted a full depression after the 51 recession. Edith Agnock's handling with the central bank measures to prevent the depression also deserves credit. This new engagement regarding the Rhesian investment interest is coordinated through our Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Gus Manger, and former President Alfonso. King Romus is interested in increasing energy independence and diversifying his energy assets. Our sources indicate that he wants to acquire control of more natural gas resources. Isn't this unusual? Aren't you and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in charge of arranging negotiations? Usually, yes, but in a special scenario such as this, real and close connections between people can improve the likelihood of a positive outcome. Since Mr. Manger has the strongest relations with the envoy, we have assigned staff to him to help with the talks. Classic Wild Gus. Even before we started campaigning, he was in the game non-stop. Gus, connecting people. It wouldn't be bad to focus on the important job of keeping our farmers and rural population happy. But as long as we are getting a good offer, it doesn't matter who officially leads a negotiation. I'm sure Mr. Wishy doesn't mind. Alfonso's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Querez, coordinated the previous trade agreement but is no longer working at the ministry. We have no close contacts with the Taurus royals anymore. It leaves us little option but to use the back channel of Mr. Manger and President Alfonso. Fine, well, we can continue the official dialogue after this. It might lead to a more substantial agreement. Of course. We are pushing to establish a stronger relationship, but in the short term, this method is the one that could yield results. Okay, let's discuss the deal potentials on the table. I don't need to know anything else about Rhesia. For now, from what we have gathered, there is no clear offer yet. The interest clearly seems to be more control over the gas produced and sold in Swordland. I suspect this must be related to the recent tensions of the coast of Pales. Mr. Major is working out the details to get more concrete headline terms soon. Of particular interest are the gas fields in the Narbel area of the Nargis region. That must be related to Gasom operations. Gus has ties with the people around that corporation. Even though there is another CEO, Ewald Alfonso is still chairman. Gasom is a private corporation, a fact that limits our control over any foreign investment. Tarquin Sol's Energy Protection Act specifically limits the purchase of Swordish Energy Company shares by foreign nations to 10%. Alfonso adjusted this law in 1948 and increased it to 20%. Anything above that requires us to change the Energy Protection Act. Ewald holds most of Gasom's cards in his hands still. Gasom is private, but it still sells most of the gas it produces to Swordland, right? I think so, yes. Lucian knows more than me. Up to 70% goes to Swordland. This used to be higher, but the international demand has seen Gasom diversify its deliveries outward. Rumberg and Lesbia are increasing their demand each year. They have hungry industries waiting to be fulfilled. Fueling Rumberg, War Machine, is indisputably wrong. Lucian pulled out a pen and took a few notes. David coughed a bit and continued talking. From our diplomatic channels, we can tell that Lesbia is still very interested in Swordish petrol, whereby Rumberg wants more gas resources. As a sovereign nation, we must protect our resources. Our energy independence is part of our national security concern here. Gasom handles most of our gas production. Keeping close control over critical resources is in sync with our planned economy strategy. I'm very glad you have chosen a Swordland-centric path, Mr. President. In theory, centralization works, but it leaves little room for outside help when internal conditions are dire. If Riesio wants to buy more than 20% of shares allowed by the protectionism laws, then the government can step in to make changes to the EPA. Precisely, but we don't know if this will be the case. There is a scenario in which they might invest within the EPA limitations. We just have to hear more before weighing the options. They never revealed much about their involvement to me, but I always had the feeling that Alfonso's crew was more linked to Gasom than they seemed. I have information that the CEO that replaced Alfonso is a loyalist. Alfonso still is the chairman of Gasom and the de facto key figure. Additionally, National Business Council chairman Mikhail Ivan and Minister Gus Major have shares in the company and preside over the board. The power structure behind the scenes shouldn't matter much to us. We'll flesh out terms and see where we get to. We are in a much stronger position to negotiate either way. Lucian's information gives us an extra edge in talks. Any further comments, esteemed cabinet members? The room went silent and no one stepped forward. It was noticeable how much people respected Wishy. He carried the soul of Swordland as a symbol of the past. I think this summarises all we know and what we stand to gain, Mr. President. What are your thoughts? We will wait to hear to see what Mr. Major has to say before we decide. If there's one thing Gus is good at, it's making deals. I'm curious how it will develop. It's mostly out of the hands of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for now. I will assist in analysing the political implications, Mr. Wishy. Thank you. Our support staff and I will be working toward the next steps soon after receiving more context from Mr. Major. Our ambassador in Port Drazen is in communication with Laurento Esquibil, the Riesian Chancellor of Foreign Affairs already. Right. That's all for now on Riesia, thank you. Of course, Mr. President. Okay, tell me about the trade deal with Agnolia. First off, the reason behind this option is more diplomatic than economic, although of course we can't forego the added economic value. Agnolia is an old ally and a valuable trade partner. The point we are at with the early negotiations is around the steel trade. They are demanding that we buy their steel for a higher price. That is because they think that the deal is far too unbalanced as it is. Their second main demand is a privileged access to our agricultural market. If we are to fulfill their demands in return, they are offering a full alliance with Swordland against Rumberg. Looking at the current advances of Rumberg near our borders, having a coalition against Rumberg would prove extremely useful. Obviously, there will be consequences for entering a full alliance. Mainly the issue is around Helluland. Valsland has clear intentions in taking over the island one way or another, and entering a military alliance with Agnolia will make them furious. I want to state my support for the decision to stick with our old ally Agnolia, even though I disagree with their demand to relax immigration. We have cooperated with them on many issues in the past. There are obviously subjects that we would still need to tackle, like our economies, the traded goods, and what to do with immigration. My opinion is that this is a good deal and we should go for it. The new Agnolian Prime Minister is trying to improve the existing relationship. The downside is that we would need to make concessions, a reality of any trade deal. Well, I don't want to give any concessions. It might be unsatisfactory in the short run, however. It would have real impact on the long run. If you decide that Agnolia is a good option, another point is that they will have a very democratic system. After the recent elections, the PM has a mandate to arrange a fairer deal with us. Martin van Horten is also an avid supporter of relaxed immigration. Since we said we will tighten immigration, he might be reluctant. Regardless, if we are going to increase our regional influence to previous levels, we might need to make amends with our neighbours. Ultimately, the decision will be up to you as always. Right, tell me about this trade deal with Valen now. Dealing with a fractured country like Valen has its positives and negatives. Although it will be lucrative in the short term, there are risks associated with dealing with such a country. They are proposing co-investment projects and a no-tariff agreement. They are also offering oil in return for attracting foreign capital interests from Swordland. However, it is possible that there will be international ramifications of getting closer with a country like Valen. All in all, this is a very lucrative deal for us. However, we need to think about the consequences. I certainly don't support the decision to become friendly with Valen. We carried their burdens for decades. Their migrants flooded our country, and now they're expecting a deal from us. Maintaining influence with Valen could prove useful. Yes, it is risky, but think about our influence on an underdeveloped region like that. We could also sell more products and enter their market easily. I am of the opinion that it is simply too risky. Yes, we would gain resources and immediate capital, but I'm afraid of the consequences. Yes, perhaps the return is too lucrative to pass on this risk. The migrant crisis was one of the reasons behind the destabilization of Swordland. I would like to point out that it was due to Valen. If we wish to go forward with the deal when the time comes, there is the topic of immigration to consider. Victor Smolak is a known isolationist. Our promise to tighten our immigration policy will increase the likelihood of the deal. He believes our borders need better security. I personally don't like the idea of getting too close to Valen. Me too. Agreed. I still think we should give it a try. Since we did not promise to align with neither East nor West, it is very likely that their concerns would be more around the deal itself. Our neutrality strategy would have been seen as a positive by nations like Rumberg if we hadn't decided to retaliate aggressively. The last handful of monarchies in Makopa are reactive against the influences of Arcasian capitalism and millennialism. We also need to consider the effects of our economic doctrine plan. The fact that we were headed towards a planned economy will have an influence. Good negotiators optimize the interests which make the differences become trivial, allowing both sides to reach a deal. Very true, Mr. Vecton. We have a lot of time to prepare before the scheduled visits to Valen and Agnolia. I believe this gives a brief overview of our current options. Our trade delegation will begin work toward the end of the year. We expect final negotiations and the signings of the trade agreements to happen next year. I am very much looking forward to visiting Stalport and Raklovich with party animals like David and Simon. Peter laughed. Iosif narrowed his eyes and stared at him. Well, that concludes our meeting, Mr. Rain. Whew. Well, have a good day all, and enjoy my hometown. I will take my leave then, sir. The meeting concluded and the team dispersed. Our diplomatic action plan officially began. Oh, Jesus wept. Jesus wept. 45 minutes. Well, actually, probably about, 35 minutes? Right, okay, so we have had our diplomatic briefing. Be interesting to see how we go with this one. I kind of have a feeling where we are going to go, but we'll play it as things unravel and see where it leads us. CSP unveils comprehensive Ayatollah plan for Rika's infrastructure. Read up as you want to do so by pausing. Arvery, young swords member claimed links to the government. In Eastord, Communist Party and Labour Union of Swordland have begun to protest against Gasson. Concerns over their activities. All very interesting. And, further issues regarding Gasson. They've now set up a picket line in Le Shaven itself. Gasson HQ is based there. So some people are not happy with Gasson right now, and we'll be shortly meeting them. Right, we've got 11 news articles. So this is Remus Holstrom. This is the young sword fella that we met in the ball, the deputy of the NFP. Voiced objections to the Workers' Rights Bill. It doesn't like the first section in relation to the rights of migrant workers. So the Energy Protection Act repeal process begins. In the Assembly, the process to repeal the Act was initiated. So obviously Friends Richter of the Piff's Jib and reformist leader, or wing leader rather, Albin Clavin want to repeal it to stimulate economic growth and foreign investment. However, most of our party, including the Conservative wing no doubt, and the National Front, wants to protect our strategic industries from foreign control. And, well, we completely agree, of course. And there is an emergency in Anrika. Chaos in the city. Security powers to be used. Mayor Lest, 20 police officers heavily wounded, 2 police stations burned down, and several shot. Not good news there. Swordland today. Alfonso Foundation, a beacon of charity. Yeah. Did Alfonso write that himself? Or at least pay for it? Calling for an open market, repealing the EPA. The old guard must embrace this changing global economic order or risk lagging behind. So we can, well, the economists, of course, oligarchs have a hand in this paper, want, sort of free market reforms happening. So, yeah, repealing that. Foreign investment, yes, stimulate the economy. Yeah, and open us up to foreign control. Completely, yes. No, thank you. No. Addressing the skilled foreign worker gap. The Swordish economy faces a critical challenge. The demand-supply gap for skilled foreign workers. Apparently we are unable to attract and retain foreign talent. Looks like we're going to have to upskill local talent instead. Unrest continues in the streets. Bus stations destroyed, shops burned, people being carried to the hospitals in ambulances. There are some peaceful protests going on, but on the whole, chaos. We need democracy, says Radical. They want the Constitution to be rewritten. Will President Rain stand up to the establishment and listen to the people? We will indeed see. Energy tensions escalate in Rhesia. Could be critical to why they're wanting to dabble their hands into our pie. And Swordland closes consulate. This clear retaliatory diplomatic response will draw a lot of attention from the global diplomatic stage, but was welcomed by PM Martin van Horten of Magnolia. President Rain seems to be decisive against Rumberg, but whether this will be worth it is another question. Oh, I'm sure it will be. By the time we've beefed up our military, Rumberg will be sorry they crossed our path. Right. National Assembly Green Bill in Hallsword. Not interested. Green Bill? What's that all about? Industry Bill, that's what we need. More choke-inducing smog. Coal, we want it all. Combined with the tourism push. Come to Swordland and go back with asthma. Right. Repeal proposal. Still being debated. Of course, it will come to us for final approval. Right, what have we got? We've got the Tourism and Cultural Preservation Act. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but out of all of our cabinet advisors, and you know, Lucien, obviously a very good advisor, gives good advice. Hall with his economy now, Gus Manger, give us an inside tip on an investment. But the one person that we probably would say that our President Rain respects the most is, of course, his ex-tutor, his ex-lecturer, is one Mr. David Wishy. So obviously we were being quite pleasant to him, offering him tea and all that, and you know, addressing him, and rather than our usual kind of sit down and get on with it kind of attitude that we've had with some of the other ministers. So he's taken time out to push this bill through. And it's all about increasing tourism. So, you know, being a nationalist and all that, you know, who wouldn't want to come and see the joys of Swordland, our fair country? And it is going to push for, you know, the economy up a little bit. So, yeah, cultural elevation of cities, local food, drink, music to exhibit and show off to people that are visiting. Yeah, restoration of landmarks. Yeah, we want Swordland looking its best for when people come to visit. Look at our fair town. All those, you know, don't visit Agnan. No, cut that off from foreign visitors. No, show them the Groony of Borin and Benfey. Come in. Yes, look at our glorious Lechave on this massive port. There's lovely areas within there of dancing and clubbing. Yeah, visit those sites. Keep them away from the horrific places like Narbel and, you know, Lenkirk. But yeah, for those two reasons, we are going to sign this particular bill. Government budget decreases, but we have a booming tourist industry, which is perfect. Tourism industry booming nationwide. So that's hit the papers already. Significant milestone in our tourism journey. There we go. And in the Radical, even they like it. A step towards progress, perhaps? We shall see. So we've got the briefing on the results of the Reform Committee, which will be our last meeting of the session, because we're up to about 53 minutes or so. So, yeah, let's have a sit down. This will be a laugh. We're kind of split in two minds here. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure that we could refuse to go ahead with the reforms and kind of go with the old guard and go that route. I haven't seen it, but it was kind of suggested in some conversation that I had in a previous playthrough that I didn't go down. But when we were talking in our last meeting, we kind of got the option also to side with our kind of conservative wing, and more particularly the NFP, in bolstering our strength to allow us to do what we need to do to run this country efficiently. And you know, any reformist kind of viewpoints, we'll just kind of ignore them. So that might be the line that's a bit more reasonable, because we can kind of say to the electorate, yes, we are going for reforms. Look, we've changed the constitution to fit our own personal gain. We might make a concession or two if we're not overly bothered about that particular thing, but we'll see. This is completely fluid as to how this conversation goes. There's nothing prejudged or pre-planned here, so let's crack on and see what's going to happen in this briefing. I came a little early to the meeting room before anybody showed up. We had scheduled a meeting to discuss the progress of the Reform Committee regarding the new constitution. I took a seat on the centre chair in the vacant meeting room as I waited for them to show up. The reforms were slowly becoming the most significant expectation of my government. We would be changing Saul's constitution of 29. Most people nowadays blame the constitution for the outstanding problems of the country. On the other hand, the reformists in the assembly had been getting louder about their demands. What I knew for sure was that I needed to do something about this encroaching chaos before it swallowed me. Meanwhile, Lucian, Peter and Nia had been leading the committee to prepare an initial draft for the constitutional amendments. I was intrigued to hear their results. There was a knock on the door. It was Lucian. Good afternoon, sir. Lucian arrived exactly on the hour mark again. His punctuality could almost be described as obsessive. Good afternoon, Lucian. He took a seat on the table and took out a bunch of documents, spreading them on the long table. We should begin the meeting as soon as Mrs. Morgner and Mr. Vice President arrives. We finally have some results from the Reform Committee. How does it look? Well, the situation is quite complicated, but I'm sure we will make it work, just like we accomplished many things before. We'll go over the details regarding the new constitution in the meeting. A few minutes later, Peter and Nia also arrived. After a short chat, everybody sat down and took out their notes. I knew it was going to be a long meeting. There is a lot to talk about the future of this process. Let us begin to tackle the points of contention. Mr. President, I've heard from Mr. Gallard that you're not intending to support the democratic reforms. Our committee meetings have been really fruitful, and we already started on the constitutional draft together with the feedback from all of the political parties. We are making clear progress here. You wouldn't really block our hard work, would you? A final decision hasn't been made yet. She leaned slightly toward me. This is our once-in-a-lifetime chance to change the constitution of Tarquin Sol, Mr. President. We worked hard to create a draft together with the leaders of our party and the opposition. Nothing else is more important for Swordland. I'll see what we can do. Peter cut in before Nia could speak. If I may continue, Mr. President, we've discussed the possibilities of your intentions with Mr. Gallard. There are some people in the USP who would support a new constitution with more executive powers. Getting the support of the NFP nationalists is our best bet on this path. That said, we should try to reach a common ground with the conservative wing of our party to be able to propose such changes in the Assembly. Can we reach a two-thirds majority in the Assembly? We'll never be able to get Piff-Jib? I don't think Lucian would call him that, but hey, to work with us. But if you can get Kizaru Kibuna to work with you on this, our only remaining problem would be uniting our own party. I don't think we're going to be able to unite the reformist wing with our constitutional reforms. Unless, and I don't know if it's a possibility, but the thought crossed my mind, unless we can threaten, cajole, or extort or bribe Albin, the leader of the reformist wing, to support us. Now, we're going to get some decent amount of personal wealth in this playthrough, I reckon. So, maybe it's an option, I don't know. It'd be interesting if it is. We need the majority of our 130 seats in the Assembly to vote in favour, but without NFP support of 40 votes, we can never surpass the needed 166. Mr. Kibiner's full support, as well as our party, is needed. So this is the difference between the last playthrough that I did and this one. In the last one we went for full democratic reform, therefore we had to get the Conservative wing, but we had the PFJP who had more seats than the NFP. So if we go for the NFP's support angle, we need a lot more of a unified party, which is going to be a challenge. But it's got to be possible, otherwise the game won't give you it as an option. Speaking from a metagame perspective, of course. So it'll be interesting. I'm quite intrigued with this one. But it will be tough to unite the USP with all of the divisive wings it has formed. You must make them follow you loyally. I'll make sure they follow me. By hook or by crook. Albin Clavin and his reformist wing will be completely against you. He has already responded negatively in the committee meetings, but I think he will still be open to discussion. However, the Conservatives may be persuaded easier. The influence of Saul is still living strong in the party. They might follow you if they respect you as a strong leader. I'll show them true leadership, don't you worry about that. Have I not already? I know you will. If you can get their support, we'll have enough votes to amend the Constitution, counting we have the support of Mr. Kibiner too. And there is another key person who can help us get their support. You must be talking about Gloria Tory. She's well respected by the Solists. She's the biggest problem in our party. But judging by what Mr. President is trying to do, I believe you can find common ground under Solism. The problem will not be her, but me, Mr. President. I cannot allow a more authoritarian constitution to be made. There is no way I can support this. Come now, Miss Morgner. There's no need for that. I meant no disrespect, Mr. President, but you should be aware of my position, and that is final. I'm sure we can. She's definitely one of principles, but obviously our president thinks he can cajole, buy, extort, charm his way through anything. I'm sure we can work something out, Mrs. Morgner. Nothing is impossible, surely. I'm starting to doubt that, Mr. President. Do not doubt me, Nia. Ooh, this is getting a bit tetchy, isn't it? Mr. President! Was that a threat? She raised an eyebrow. Right, can we pass it through the Supreme Court? They are the biggest obstacle. Even if we pass the Assembly, the Chief Justice will do his best to block our amendments. We need at least 6 of the 11 judges to vote for the proposal, but Mr. Hawker has enormous influence over the judges. We should reach out to the judges in secret. Some of them might be willing to break ranks to support us. We will do whatever's necessary to get them in line. Nia was taken aback by that statement. We will definitely need to work with some of the old guard aligned judges. Who do you think will be willing to support these changes? I think we can reach out to Judge Edmonds, and in extension Mr. Dalton and Mr. Martin. They aren't working together with the old guards as far as we know. We will also need to get more votes from the Conservative judges. I believe Heron Grassi might be the weakest link of the old guards. He can help us get to the 6 votes needed. According to the Constitution, I am a member of the Supreme Court, which means you already have one vote against this. I already know 2 of the judges who are with me as well. Come now, Mrs. Morgner. You said you were open to discuss Mr. President's version of the Constitution. Of course, Mr. Vecton, but I already have a strong opinion about what it contains. Lucian cut in. Anything else, sir? Did you already work on a plan? Yes, Mr. President. Lucian pulled out his huge dossier from his briefcase. What? You were working on a different draft while we were working in the committee? That is correct. Mr. President had stronger ideas. Surely I couldn't work with the Reform Committee. No offence. Now, if we are going with this direction, I'll need everybody to focus. Let's proceed. Okay then, let's see what we're talking about here. She spoke with a gentle tone, but her face couldn't hide her disappointment and anger. We have established 2 points parallel to the demands of the reformists. I'll go through each of them and get your input. We'll start with Section 1. Reformists want your absolute veto power to be removed, or at least limited. We could potentially give them what they want by limiting it. It wouldn't cause problems, since we already have the majority in the Assembly. Or better yet, we could change the article according to their demands, but establish new loopholes for you to hold your veto powers. Who doesn't love a good loophole? Oh, give me the loopholes, Lucian. Give me the loopholes. What kind of loopholes are we talking about here? Well, we could define a process for the Assembly to override your vetoes with a supermajority. While this limits your veto capabilities, if we do not define a time limit for the President to act on a bill, you could technically choose to take no action instead of signing or vetoing it. Without a proper definition of the process, it would be perfectly legal for you to ignore a bill indefinitely. Let me understand this properly, Lucian. Bear with me. This is new. So they could they could override my veto. So if I don't veto it or sign it, aka technically I'm vetoing it, I could just ignore it. And they can't override me. I like it, Lucian. A pocket veto? You think that's clever, Mr. Gallard, but anybody who understands the law would see that hole. There's no way the reformists would be deceived by that. With all due respect, I will take my leave from this meeting. I don't think I have anything to add anymore. I cannot associate with plans of tyranny. She took her notes and stood up. I wish you a good day, Mr. President. We'll see what happens in the Assembly and the Court. Good day to you too, Miss Morgner. We should have if we could have threatened her, we could have gone the whole hog. Be careful what you do, Miss Morgner. Goodbye. She gave a fake smile and left the room. That's troublesome. Ooh, we've really ruffled some feathers here. While I respect her, I doubt that she's capable of creating major obstacles for us, but we have to keep close eyes on her. Yes, keep an eye. We can't let her sabotage us. I don't like her tone. Of course, sir. I'll move on to the second point then. The new constitution should remove the Supreme Court out of the constitutional amendment process. Not only popular, it would also strengthen our position against the judiciary. This is a point that was unanimously agreed on by all parties. Tarquin Sol established this rule to protect his 29 constitution. We can break the powers of the old guards with this. According to such change, constitutional amendments will still require the 2/3 vote system to be able to propose a change. However, the judiciary will not have the final say in the amendments. I mean, technically speaking, if we had the court on side, it wouldn't really matter, would it? I suppose. Okay. Can't disagree with that. Glad to hear it, sir. Apart from these two critical points, we could address a lot of the issues already in discussion for our own benefit. NFP want to reform the appointment procedures of the ministers. Mr. Kibbener clarified that the Assembly should have a say in the formation of the Council of Ministers. They are a potential ally, so this is an important demand to consider. That is something that a majority in our party also supports. Okay. Okay. We could address the term limits and election threshold as well. Well, that one is a controversial one. I doubt the USP would like that. Immunity of the justices, the impeachment of the president, the power of the presidential decrees, all of these are in the realm of possibilities. If we can establish a proper balance and get the support of the NFP, you can gain a lot from these changes. I'd say keeping everything in the middle ground is the safest bet. No need to agitate anyone too much. Okay. Well, we need to work closely with the NFP. They are our only potential partners. I'll keep working with them and keep you updated, Mr. President. Well, regardless of what you decide, we will need to work together with all the Cabinet to push this agenda. But now we have a better picture of your intentions, sir, I will start reaching out to my contacts to make a draft that works for you. I'll present your input to the USP leaders and the National Front. In a few months, you would have the draft on your desk to make the final changes yourself. I think this was yet another fruitful meeting, sir. I trust your judgment. Together, we will make Swordland great. Is that our intentions? Yes, we will. I'm sure you will lead us to greatness, sir. Thanks for your time. I think this is where we'll call it. Have a good day. They left the room. Wow. Well, that was completely different from the first playthrough that I did. So, really intrigued to see where this one goes. Nia stormed out. We're talking about implementing loopholes. Yeah. Gonna be interesting. So we might be able to still win over the reformists, because what if we remove the Supreme Court's constitutional vote, they're up for that, and if we remove our veto power but put the loophole in, they might go for that. I mean, naturally, also if we limit our veto right with as they want. We have got a USB majority, so it's not going to be that much of a problem. So, you know, if we're ruling with an iron fist and we've got the USB on side, is that really a problem? But in principle, we don't want to limit our veto, really. So that one is a sticking point. It's going to be interesting how the president feels when it comes to signing it. Loopholes or limiting. I think we're going to go for one of the two rather than keep it as it is, because we are a political man and we want to try to keep a hold of our power for as long as possible. So, you know, there's going to have to be a little bit of concession given, but not too much. But yeah, if we can achieve concession with, you know, the odd loophole or two, it's going to be rather interesting. But Nia saw right through it, and we've told her, I mentioned it in front of her, so she'll just tell everybody this is a loophole, so it's not worth the paper it's written on. So, interesting is all I'll say. Really looking forward to see how this develops, but we've got to manoeuvre ourselves carefully. And in relation to moving yourself carefully, we're going to start the next session with a very, very important meeting, and that is a meeting with Chief Justice Orso Hawker, who obviously will not be happy about these reforms. Now, I was wondering if this conversation is going to go a little bit differently this time around, because we are taking a different tact with our constitutional reforms, but one of the things that we're still discussing is removing the court from the constitutional change process. So I think he's still going to be very unhappy that we're pressing ahead with the reforms. But there's going to be one option, or a couple of options in this, that's going to actually be quite interesting for us to consider. And we'll get to that in the next session. So, yeah, join me next time when we have a very important conversation with the Chief Justice. Until then, though, I'll see you soon.